Right, so Capcom's got 600 people slaving away on Resident Evil 6. And we got a first look at it just recently. I'm looking forward to it personally, but then I quite enjoyed
Resident Evil 5.
And Seb, meanwhile...
I hated it.
Right, yeah, we know.
So much.
Yeah, exactly. And
I took out a newspaper ad.
Resident Evil 5.
So recently we had a look at Resident Evil
6
when Capcom showed it off at Captivate in Rome the other week.
So we're fully prepared to answer all of your questions about Resident Evil
6.
So, fire away.
Azura'u says, I just want to know the characters we can use.
What are you talking about?
So there's Leon Kennedy, that's the hero of
Resident Evil 4.
And Chris Redfield, hero of course of Resident Evil 5. And they're together at last.
And also there's...
Is the new guy, Steve, back from the dead and made into a real boy, says Chris Dove.
Right, I was just getting to that. The third guy is in fact not Steve or Hunk, he is Jake Muller.
Someone ponies up the dough.
Who is the son of Albert Wesker. Now they don't share the same name because Jake didn't know his dad while he was growing up. But they do share the same genetic code, and as we recall, Wesker was pumped up to the mutant grills with umbrella viruses.
Heir to a very special blood type.
And in a nice touch of classic Resident Evil style, you can choose which order you play the three heroes in.
Here's something to remember me by.
And next, Mohammed Omer Tanvir would like to know, to what extent have they ditched the survival horror genre?
Well, that is the question. The game makers would say, and they said explicitly it was a return to horror, but they also talked up a lot of horror entertainment, by which they seem to mean horror in the service of a plot rather than horror for the sake of the scares, okay? There was plenty of slower, spooky stuff in the portion of the game we saw, in which Leon's like mooching around this old university building, kind of like a haunted mansion stand-in, but it could go the same way as Resident Evil Revelations, which started out slow and creepy in another haunted mansion stand-in, and then kind of got a bit more action-focused as it went.
This is Raccoon City all over again.
Will there be real zombies? I want to shoot corpses of undead, not mutant things with weapons, says Tyron Wayne.
Again, the makers of the game say real zombies, but that also depends on your definition of real zombies. The ones we saw were sort of slow and lumbering from far away, and then they're slightly faster and jumpier and lungier as they get close up. And in the portion we saw, they weren't shooting or mutating or anything, but some were carrying improvised weapons, and Capcom has said that those carrying weapons will be things to do with what they were up to in their previous pre-zombie lives. One of the guys we saw was carrying a metal pipe, so we can only assume he was a plumber. And Thomas Buttery wants to know online features. What are they offering?
Well, Thomas, there's going to be a mercenaries mode, which you might remember from recent Resident Evil games, but this time it's unlocked from the get-go. And of course, there's co-op. Speaking of which, Wakel Lath says, will there be co-op with Leon and Chris?
No, sorry, Chris and Leon will cross paths, but it seems you won't be able to play both at the same time. The main quest line is co-op throughout, either with a player control partner or with a computer control partner, and each of the main guys gets a different sidekick. Leon gets Helena Harper. She's a US Secret Service lady who should have been protecting the president.
Mr. President!
Chris gets a sniper buddy called Piers Nivens. No, really. And Jake gets Sherry Birkin. Remember her? She was the little girl from
Resident Evil 2.
The way Capcom's telling it, she's all compassionate and caring, and he's a cynical, unfeeling mercenary. So, will she melt his icy mercenary heart? We say Resident Evil, yes.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. The world needs you.
And Mike Johnston wants to know, how is Chris coping after coming off the steroids?
I don't know. Chris, are you coping?
No, goddammit!
Adam Shepard wants to know, does Chris Redfield still have the power to crush a boulder with his bare hands?
You mean like this? Okay, so he's not quite as ham-fisted, beef-cakedly ripped as he was in
Resident Evil 5.
But he's still pretty buff, and isn't that what we all really want to know?
We need backup!
And Adam Shepard wants to know, also, will cover spots play more of a role in Resi 6 than Resi 5?
Well, it looks to be the case. We didn't see any cover in the demo we saw over at Captivate, but in the first trailer you might remember you can see a guy sliding into cover, and then the main enemy creature, which actually isn't a zombie, is a dude called a Jarvo, sprouts this red tentacle thing and goes for the guy behind cover. So it will be there.
It must be what's creating those Chihuahua.
All right, and John Carl Adams wants to know, can you actually walk and shoot at the same time? Because in my opinion, that's a rather good survival technique.
Yes, yes you can. And there'll be dual wielding, there'll be plenty of melee, and you can even shoot from prone because, as Capcom says, lying down on the floor when surrounded by zombies is an extremely good survival technique. And when is the release date? Asked Peter Belcher-Truss.
That's a good question, Peter. In fact, Capcom's brought the release date earlier, so now it's coming out on October 2nd instead of November 20th. They say it's because they just can't wait to get the game into your hands. You're so excited to play it. But also, it does mean they get the jump on the big games this autumn, like Assassin's Creed 3 and Bioshock Infinite. Finally, Steve Usor wants to know what happens at the end.
Well, my guess is they go with another virus.
New virus, next virus.
I'm thinking the Q virus.
They had one of those. They used all the letters at this point. Surely.
Okay, so we're going to go to
all
numbers
26 viruses. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so virus 4.
Right, or like
5.
non-alphanumeric character viruses.
Percentage virus.
Right, the ampersand.
Hashtag